Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we share powerful tales of courage, compassion, and resilience. Today's story takes us to Cedar Grove, where a mother's intuition and a child's innocent fears lead to an extraordinary act of kindness that changes lives forever. Stay tuned for an inspiring journey of hope and humanity. It was an ordinary autumn afternoon in Cedar Grove. The trees were aflame with shades of orange and red, and the crisp air carried the laughter of children playing in the neighborhood park. Jessica, a caring mother with an ever-watchful eye, strolled along the familiar path with her 2-year-old daughter. Emily, with her golden curls and wide, innocent eyes, usually loved these walks. She would point out birds, chase after falling leaves, and giggle at the rustle of squirrels darting into the trees. But lately, Jessica had noticed a change. Emily's usual cheer dimmed whenever they passed by the old, worn-down public restroom near the park's edge. The once functional structure had fallen into neglect, its faded paint and cracked tiles a sharp contrast to the vibrant park surrounding it. On this particular day, Emily clung tightly to Jessica's hand as they neared the restroom. Her small fingers dug into her mother's palm, and her pace slowed to a halt. "No, Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't go near it." Jessica knelt beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her flushed cheek. "What is it, sweetheart?" she asked gently. "It's just an old building." Emily's blue eyes, filled with both fear and determination, fixed on the restroom's shadowed backside. She pointed a tiny finger toward it and whispered, "The person in the shadows." Jessica blinked, her heart skipping a beat. She looked over her shoulder at the structure, but there was nothing there. Only the cold grey of its walls and a patch of dried grass at its base. "There's no one there, Emily," Jessica reassured her with a smile, though a faint unease had begun to stir within her. "It's just your imagination." Emily clung tighter, shaking her head. "The person is hiding." That evening, as Jessica tucked Emily into bed, her daughter's earlier fear lingered in her mind. Emily had always been sensitive, noticing details others missed. But this was different. Jessica told herself it was just a phase, a child's active imagination running wild. Still, the way Emily's voice had quivered sent a chill down Jessica's spine. The following days brought more of the same. Each time they neared the public restroom, Emily grew visibly distressed, sometimes even refusing to walk further. She would cling to Jessica's leg, her tiny hands trembling as she pointed toward the building. "The person in the shadows," she would whisper, her voice barely audible but filled with certainty. Jessica began avoiding the path altogether, choosing routes that steered them far from the restroom. But the unease didn't leave her. At night, she found herself staring out the window, her mind replaying Emily's words. What was it about that restroom that frightened her daughter so deeply? Jessica tried to rationalize it. Our shape, a shadow, or even a stray animal could have spooked Emily. But doubt lingered, heavy and persistent. Finally, one brisk Saturday morning, Jessica decided to confront the source of her unease. "Emily, you'll stay with Daddy while I run an errand," she said brightly, kissing her daughter on the cheek. Emily nodded, preoccupied with her coloring book. But as Jessica slipped on her coat, Emily looked up. "Be careful, Mommy," she said softly, her wide eyes full of unspoken fear. Jessica's steps were slow and deliberate as she approached the restroom. The park was nearly empty, the early hour keeping most families indoors. The building loomed ahead, its shadow stretching long in the pale morning light. Jessica hesitated, the chilly wind biting at her cheeks. A part of her wanted to turn back, But Emily's voice echoed in her mind. Gathering her courage, Jessica circled to the back of the restroom. At first glance, there was nothing, just a patch of dirt and a cluster of weeds. But as she stepped closer, she heard it, a faint rustling, followed by a low, wheezing sound. Her breath caught as she noticed a figure slumped against the wall, partially hidden by the weeds. It was an elderly woman, her frail body wrapped in a tattered coat. Her face was pale and gaunt, her eyes half closed as she struggled to breathe. Jessica's heart raced as she crouched beside her. She whispered, her voice trembling. "Can you hear me?" The woman's eyelids fluttered, and her lips parted. "Help me," she rasped, her voice barely audible. Jessica didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking as she relayed their location. "You're going to be okay," she said softly, taking the woman's cold hand in hers. "Help is on the way." As the distant sound of sirens grew closer, Jessica's thoughts swirled. Emily had known. Somehow, her daughter had sensed what others had ignored. And now, because of Emily's fear, a life was being saved. Jessica felt a surge of both gratitude and determination. This wasn't the end of the story, it was only the beginning. The ambulance's flashing lights illuminated the park as paramedics rushed to assist the frail woman Jessica had found behind the restroom. She watched with bated breath as they carefully lifted the elderly woman onto a stretcher. Her face was etched with both relief and unease. Who was this woman? What had brought her to this desolate place? Jessica couldn't shake the image of her emaciated frame. The way her cracked lips had struggled to form words. As the paramedics prepared to leave, one turned to Jessica. "You found her just in time. She's severely malnourished and dehydrated. But with proper care, she'll recover." Jessica nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I follow her to the hospital? I need to make sure she's okay." The paramedic hesitated for a moment before offering a reassuring smile. "Of course." Later, in the sterile quiet of the hospital waiting room, Jessica sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The events of the morning played over and over in her mind. A soft cough drew her attention, and she looked up to see a nurse approaching. "She's stable," the nurse said gently. "You can see her now. But only for a few minutes. She's very weak." Jessica followed the nurse to the room, her heart pounding. The elderly woman lay on the hospital bed, her sunken cheeks and hollow eyes a haunting reminder of her ordeal. Yet, despite her fragility, there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes as Jessica entered. Jessica began, her voice soft but steady. "I'm Jessica? I found you earlier. Can you tell me your name?" The woman's lips trembled as she whispered, "Eleanor Turner." Jessica's heart ached at the sound of her voice, so faint and filled with years of suffering. "Mrs. Turner," she said gently, pulling a chair closer. "Can you tell me what happened? How did you end up there?" Eleanor's story unfolded in halting fragments, each word weighed down by pain. She had been living with her son, Michael, after her husband's passing. What started as a promise to care for her in her old age had quickly turned into a nightmare. Michael, consumed by greed and frustration, had taken control of her finances and forced her out of her own home. With nowhere to go and no one to turn to, she had wandered the streets, eventually finding herself at the abandoned restroom where she hoped to remain unseen. Tears welled in Jessica's eyes as she listened. The thought of someone abandoning their own mother was incomprehensible. "You're safe now, Mrs. Turner," she said firmly. "I'll make sure of it." Over the next few days, Jessica became Eleanor's advocate. She contacted social services, explained Eleanor's situation, and began working to secure her the resources she needed. But Jessica couldn't stop there. The more she learned about Michael's actions, the more determined she became to see justice served. One evening, after putting Emily to bed, Jessica shared Eleanor's story with her husband, Brian. "How could someone do this to their own mother?" she asked, her voice trembling with anger. "We can't let him get away with it." Brian, a steadfast and compassionate partner, nodded. "We won't. But we need to gather evidence and take the right steps. If Michael's actions have been as deliberate as they seem, the law is on our side." Together, they began piecing together Eleanor's past, reaching out to her friends, neighbors, and anyone who might have witnessed her son's behavior. Jessica was relentless, fueled by the image of Eleanor's frail body and the knowledge that she could have died if not for Emily's intuition. Days turned into weeks, and their efforts began to bear fruit. Statements from neighbors confirmed that Michael had isolated Eleanor, cutting her off from friends and community. Bank records showed suspicious withdrawals from her accounts, and social services unearthed legal documents that Michael had forged to gain control of her estate. Armed with this evidence, Jessica and Brian worked with authorities to build a case against Michael. When the police finally arrested him, Jessica felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Justice was being served. But more importantly, Eleanor was finally free from her son's oppressive grasp. As the legal process unfolded, Jessica remained a constant presence in Eleanor's life. She visited her daily, bringing warm meals and books to keep her spirits up. Emily, too, became a bright light in Eleanor's recovery. Her innocent laughter and gentle hugs a balm to the older woman's wounds. One afternoon, as Eleanor sat in the hospital garden watching Emily chase butterflies, she turned to Jessica with tears in her eyes. "You saved me," she said softly. "If it weren't for you and Emily, I don't think I'd be here." Jessica took her hand, her voice firm yet warm. "No one deserves to be treated the way you were. Eleanor, you're part of our family now, and we'll make sure you're never alone again." For the first time in years, Eleanor felt hope. She had been abandoned, betrayed, and left to suffer. But now, she had found kindness, love, and a chance to rebuild her life. Jessica, too, felt a profound sense of purpose. This journey had begun with a child's intuition, but it had grown into something far greater, a fight for justice, a testament to compassion, and a reminder of the power of human connection. As spring painted cedar grove in soft greens and blooming flowers, Eleanor Turner began to reclaim pieces of her life. Her recovery was slow, each step forward marked by moments of doubt and hesitation. But Jessica and her family were always there to guide her. Eleanor, once frail and withdrawn, started to regain her strength and spirit in the warm embrace of her newfound family. Jessica transformed her spare room into a cozy sanctuary for Eleanor. The walls were adorned with soft pastel colors, and the shelves were lined with books and framed photographs of happier times that Eleanor had retrieved with Jessica's help. Emily took a special liking to Eleanor, often curling up next to her in a rocking chair as Eleanor shared stories of her youth. These moments, filled with laughter and shared memories, began to restore a light in Eleanor's eyes that had been missing for years. One morning, as Jessica prepared breakfast, she noticed Eleanor standing at the window, her gaze fixed on the garden. "I can't thank you enough," Eleanor said softly, her voice breaking the morning stillness. "You gave me a second chance when I thought all was lost." Jessica wiped her hands on a towel and joined her. "You deserved that chance, Eleanor. No one should go through what you did." Eleanor smiled faintly, her hand brushing a tear from her cheek. It's not just me you've helped. You've shown me that kindness still exists. Even after everything I've been through. The small household settled into a new rhythm. Brian helped Eleanor navigate the complexities of rebuilding her life. From regaining access to her bank accounts to filing the necessary paperwork for her legal case against Michael. Eleanor's days were filled with therapy sessions, both physical and emotional, to heal the wounds of neglect and betrayal. She found solace in Jessica's kitchen, often assisting in preparing meals and delighting in Emily's endless chatter. As weeks turned into months, Eleanor's resilience grew. She started venturing out into the community with Jessica and Emily, attending local craft fairs and visiting the neighborhood park. Slowly but surely, she began to feel like a part of the world again. One Saturday afternoon, Jessica surprised Eleanor with a visit to the local senior center. "I thought you might like to meet some new friends," Jessica said, her tone light and encouraging. Eleanor hesitated at first, her grip tightening on Jessica's arm as they entered the center's bustling common room. But soon, the warmth of the people around her eased her nerves. Within minutes, Eleanor found herself engaged in a lively conversation about gardening with a fellow senior, her laughter filling the room. Later that evening, as they walked back home, Eleanor turned to Jessica. "You were right. It feels good to be around people again." Jessica smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You're stronger than you realize, Eleanor. This is just the beginning." Eleanor's case against her son, Michael, came to a close in early summer, with the help of Jessica and her family, along with dedicated social workers and legal advocates. Michael was held accountable for his actions. The court's decision brought Eleanor both justice and closure. But more importantly, it solidified her belief that she was no longer alone. To celebrate the milestone, Jessica and Brian hosted a small gathering in their backyard. Friends and neighbors came together, sharing food, laughter, and heartfelt stories. Eleanor, seated under a canopy of twinkling lights, looked around at the smiling faces and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. During a quiet moment, Emily climbed onto Eleanor's lap, her tiny hands clutching a handmade card. "This is for you," Emily said shyly. Eleanor opened the card, her eyes welling up as she read the childlike scrawl, "Thank you for being my friend." Tears streamed down Eleanor's cheeks as she hugged Emily tightly. "Thank you, my sweet girl. You're my friend too." In the months that followed, Eleanor embraced her new life with a sense of purpose. She became a regular at the senior center, sharing her story with others and finding ways to give back to the community that had welcomed her. Jessica and Brian encouraged her every step of the way, their home becoming a hub of love and support. On the anniversary of Eleanor's rescue, the family gathered for a quiet dinner. As they raised their glasses to toast, Eleanor looked around the table, her heart full. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You didn't just save me, you gave me a family." Jessica reached across the table to hold Eleanor's hand. "You're a part of us now, Eleanor. Family isn't about where you come from, it's about who you choose to love and stand by." That evening, as the stars glittered above Cedar Grove, Eleanor sat on the porch with Jessica. The two women talked quietly, their bond now as strong as any forged by blood. Eleanor, once a woman cast aside and left to suffer, had found not only safety but a renewed sense of belonging. Jessica's actions had begun as a response to a child's intuition, but they had grown into a profound lesson about the power of compassion. Together, she and her family had shown that courage, empathy, and determination could heal even the deepest wounds. As the night deepened, Jessica looked at Eleanor and said, "You've come so far. You've shown all of us what it means to fight for a better life." Eleanor smiled, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light. "And you've shown me what it means to be loved." Their journey had been one of fear and uncertainty, but it had blossomed into a testament to the strength of the human spirit. For Jessica, Eleanor, and little Emily, the discovery behind the restroom had led not just to a life saved, but to lives forever changed. Together, they proved that even in the darkest moments, light and love could prevail. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey. Jessica's story reminds us of the incredible strength in compassion and the profound impact of listening to those around us. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Empathy Stories for more inspiring tales. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thank you for being part of our community of kindness.